NFL offenses. We're talking powerhouse offenses. We're talking the lowest ranked offenses. Who was expected to score the most in the NFL season, and who's got the best position groups to do that on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks to everybody for making this your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Love our everydayers. Thanks for hanging with us as we get ready for 2025. And we're looking at projections for which teams are going to be the highest scoring offenses in the NFL on today's program, which is brought to you by Gametime and the Gametime app. And a very special offer for our listeners as it pertains to Gametime is all you got to do is download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. And I'm glad, Matt, that you were able to wake up and join me today, knowing that you are in the state of Kentucky and all the bourbon available at your fingertips this week.
Yeah, so I'm basically doing like 24 hours here. It's my son's orientation. I think I mentioned that yesterday. It's like when you stop, it's 6 hours from Pittsburgh to Lexington. Super impressed with the town, the college. I can see why he fell in love with it. But I'm a big bourbon guy and happened to hit this insane bourbon superstore, more or less. And not going to tell you what I spent, but it was a little ridiculous. I didn't go too crazy. I'm just sitting here. Most of it's just still in the back of the car. And the wife will be a little shocked when I get home, but we got a grad party coming up. Maybe we'll, have a little. We definitely have a Kentucky bourbon type theme going for the grad party. So I mean, it'll get spread around a little bit if I share.
Be like, hey, why are you going to visit him at college again this weekend?
Right.
What's going on?
I will say, PA is like known for, I think, all alcohol, but definitely liquor is like one of the most expensive states out there. So even like the same bottle here versus there, that's how I'm going to sell it at home. Don't tell me.
That's worth.
I'm just saving so much money here. I can hardly stand it.
You got to do the gas breakdown versus the savings of the bourbon. And,
right.
Maybe some vintage bottles that might actually gain value. Maybe something you can't get everywhere else, but you can only get in the state of Kentucky. So yeah,
the selection is ridiculous and the prices are ridiculous. I was like a kid in a candy store.
We're talking offenses today. Do you want to break down what we're doing with the Vegas odds and how we came to the conclusion of who might be the highest scoring offenses in the NFL in 2025?
Yeah. So part of me finds this amazing, but it's very true, and it's been going on for quite a few years now, that as of right now, any sports book, from what I understand, you can go bet any NFL game. You can bet the week 1 games. You can bet week 13 Thursday night football, not even knowing who's healthy, all that stuff. Or, this team's on an 8-game losing streak. You have no idea.
It's amazing. It's
amazing.
Our sponsors, FanDuel, they're not sponsoring today's show, but you go to FanDuel right now. You can bet on every game of the entire season. There are tons of ways to bet on the NFL, even though it's not NFL season. And that's where these odds are coming from.
Yeah, and I'll kind of tell you the formula in a minute. And I'm not smart enough to know about betting to know why this is profitable for them. They just want you to make bets, and they start to weigh it when that week comes around, that they change the line so that it balances out. Plus they have your money for a couple of months sometimes. So maybe I guess that's worth it. Just holding your money's worth it.
That's true. You got to wait till the end of the season for some of these to pay off.
Exactly. But anyway, so let's say week 10 game, the over-under is 43. And the Bills are favored over the Dolphins by 3 with an over-under of 43. I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible. There's then an implied total. That means that Vegas thinks the game will be 23-20, Bills win. See what I'm saying? So you use both numbers to come up with the implied total.
Implied total points, yeah.
Yep, you win by 3 and you hit the over-under exactly. So if we work off that premise, and that's what this list is, look at every game and figure out every team's implied total for the year and who's going to score the most points, who's going to score the least. So if the Bills scored 23 in that week, well, let's check that one off. Let's go look at the other 16 games, add them all up. You know what I mean? Now, of course, they're not going to hit, but the folks in Vegas seem to know a thing or two.
And it's interesting where there's some cutoffs in some areas where the numbers jump, and it's kind of around the top 10 teams, and then I would say the bottom 12 or so teams, maybe, and even maybe more of like a bottom 5 that seem to let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'd say bottom 8 teams is kind of a clear teardrop there. So let's focus on the top 10 and the bottom 8, and then if we don't mention the team, then you can know that they're probably in the middle of the road.
Somewhere in the middle. So this obviously implies, too, their strength of schedule. So if you're favored in a ton of games, that factors it in, too. It's not, so Buffalo's first, and as of some of the top teams, some of the first-place teams, their schedule's not as difficult as others because their division's not super hard. They play a lot of home games against the top teams. So I assume they're favored quite a bit, and there are a lot of high over-under totals. That would only make sense, right?
And you could probably start to find some teams where you're like, well, maybe Vegas is too high on some of these teams as well. And, a team that's maybe favored a lot. And then you're starting to look at this and like, is this team really this good? Is this team going to outscore everybody by this much? And
yeah.
I think you start looking at it through that lens as well. And I find it interesting. The Buffalo Bills are number 1 on this list. Yeah.
And I mean, I guess it shouldn't shock anybody. They have a superstar quarterback who was MVP last year, right? He was MVP. Like him and Lamar were so close. It did go to Allen. I mean, he's as good as basically any player in the league right now. Mm-hmm. I don't think his skill guys are awesome, and they run the ball an awful lot, but they consistently score a ton of points. I mean, the number of touchdowns Allen has created since joining the league is off the charts. So I'm not totally shocked by this. I kind of thought the number 2 team would get the nod.
So multiple things here. I think strength of schedule is obviously part of it too.
Big.
The Buffalo Bills, you might look at the AFC East and think that they don't have a rough schedule compared to some other teams around the NFL. And I have the San Francisco 49ers that I cover closely. They're in the top 10 of this. And I think they will have a good offense, but they have an easy schedule too, which helps them rise up the ranks here if you don't think their offense is going to be a powerhouse or some high volume scoring offense. But the number 1 thing I looked at when I saw this list is, remember when we did our quarterback tiers?
Yeah.
And, I think it's not shocking for anybody to have a similar tier 1 of NFL quarterbacks, Josh Allen being one of them, and the other guys being who? Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and Patrick Mahomes.
I think they're clearly tier 1.
And those are the top 4 teams on this.
And those are the top 4 teams. How about that? And again, Bills and Ravens quarterbacks were neck and neck for MVP last year. They frankly outplayed Mahomes. Burrow probably is in that conversation too, is just let down so much by their defense. And the Bengals really only have one path to winning, and that is gas, put the gas pedal to the floor, score as much as we possibly can, throw, go crazy in that regard.
And I would probably, if I was to bet on a team that, even though they're at number 3, to finish higher than where they're listed, it might be the Bengals. Like,
really?
The team where I would think like, okay, well, which team is probably going to be high on this list? It's probably going to be the Bengals as far as projected points. And that's not necessarily because of strength of schedule. It's just because of how they are going to have to win.
Yeah. And the other 2 teams run the ball better, especially Baltimore. They'll shorten games. I mean, Baltimore's notorious during the Lamar era, and now it's compounded even more with Henry. If they have a halftime lead, and we'll get to the Eagles too, they're the same way. We're just not going to throw. So they just choke you out and maybe don't score as much as they possibly can, but they just wear on you and wear on you and wear on you, where I don't think Cincy can do that. If Cincy's up 10 points at the half, I'm not telling Joe Burrow just to hand it off over and over. I mean, it's not the same as the Ravens or Eagles that way.
It's the implied projected points here. The Bills are so far ahead.
I'm a little shocked. Yeah.
The Bills are up a good number. They're up 20 points over the course of the season over number 4, Kansas City Chiefs.
Right.
2 points. And they're up like 50 points over other teams in the top 10 for implied projected points for the season.
So as great as the Chiefs are, I wanted to stick with them just for a minute. And no one's doubting Reed, Mahomes, etc. And frankly, I'm excited to see all three of their wideouts and Kelsey healthy. But they're not a phenomenal running team. Their O-line definitely has questions, to be kind. And as I was sitting here in my Kentucky hotel room last night, I read the Chiefs chapter in Warren Sharp's book while sipping some bourbon. And this kind of blew me away. I just cut and pasted, put it on Twitter, that the Chiefs were 32 of 32 in rate of passes thrown 15 or more yards downfield. And they were first in the league at passes thrown at or behind the line of scrimmage. They're like the least explosive offense in the league and really didn't even try to be.
And they've been skewing in that direction, but they've gone so far that they've got to come back the other way at some point.
I would assume. I mean, you would think like, I keep coming back to the receivers. Like, I think Rashee Rice is like the guy to own in fantasy and going to be the target monster. And then Worthy becomes the shot guy. And you also have Marquise Brown, who's the shot guy. I just don't know if they run the ball well enough that you're going to get people out of too high shells and things like that. You know,
like the way people play against them is why they started to play this way, but it's gone so far in that direction.
And a lot of it happened when they traded Tyreek. I mean, Mahomes, to his credit, really decided, okay, I'm going to put my ego aside and I'll take the 5-yard completion on first down over and over and over. I don't have to be Superman, shrug 3 guys off, throw it across my body like John Elway into the corner of the end zone every time. I'm mature enough to death by 1,000 paper cuts. But one thing Warren really talks in that chapter too is they were also like remarkably efficient on third downs and things like that. That's kind of hard to sustain. So you're going to need some level of explosiveness, and they're not as explosive as these other teams at the top.
Will the Chiefs be more explosive this year? Let us know in the comments on YouTube at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Get those mailbag questions in. Let's talk about some of the other highest scoring teams as far as implied points this season, the lower end of teams, the bottom 8 or so, and then an interesting article on ESPN about the skill position groups and how that is all balanced in here with what we expect teams to be on offense in 2025. Next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Gametime, the Gametime app. I say it all the time. I'll say it again. If you are a sports fan, and I know you are because you're listening to this podcast, you got to have Gametime in your pocket, ready to go. If you ever want to go buy tickets to a concert, a sporting event, a comedy show. If you ever decided maybe last minute, go ahead to the ball game with family or friends. Maybe it's game day. You suddenly realize, man, I want to go be in the stands. Let's go catch a ball game today. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress, get phenomenal deals on seats, and the price actually goes down the closer it gets to, say, first pitch of a baseball game or the opening band going on stage. Gametime makes it possible, and maybe even splurge on some food and drinks or merch, or maybe even bring a bigger group with more people because all the money you're going to save on those tickets with Gametime. Gametime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On and Locked On MLB. So when you're making it, when you're looking for tickets, excited for an upcoming Major League Baseball game, check out Gametime or whatever the seats you want to get. Gametime, have it in your pocket, man. That is the best advice I can give right now on this podcast today. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Taking a look at implied scoring for the 2025 season. We talked about the teams with the elite quarterbacks, the teams expected to win a lot of games. Will probably score a lot of points, and that has been implied by the Las Vegas Lions coming into the 2025 season. The rest of the top 10 teams here after the Bills, Ravens, Bengals, and Chiefs are 1 through 4. Then you got the Philadelphia Eagles, reigning champs at 5. You got Washington Commanders coming in at 6. Detroit Lions 7. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 8. A little bit of a tier break in the next couple of teams who are the Rams and the 49ers to round out the top 10 before there's another little bit of a tier break before you start to get to 11 and 12 and the middle rung of teams in the NFL as far as implied points.
I don't much to add to that. I mean, I think that that's pretty much dead on. Now, I look at the Lions and Bucks and be like, well, their coordinators became head coaches. That can't be wonderful. Where you look at like the Rams and Niners and you know the man in charge of the offense and you know that it's going to be really, really good. The team that's most interesting to me, though, is Washington. And I say it too much on this podcast, but I am a little worried of a CJ Stroud slight step back in the second year for Daniels, who I think is magnificent. Don't get me wrong. But still, even if his level of play goes from a 90 to an 87, and he's still great, but it's not quite as good as last year. He now has Debo. The whole system has a second year in the league. They traded for Tunsil. They drafted a tackle in the first round. Like, I don't see any offensive weaknesses for them. And kind of like the Bengals, I don't have much faith in their defense either. So I might think that they're a little low. You mentioned if anyone's high, ends up higher than you might look at this list, it would be Cincy amongst the top teams. Of the tier 2 teams, I think Washington could end up first on the list.
And the other side of that, the team that could drop a little bit, and a team I think is still going to be good, and obviously Vegas thinks that they are going to be good, is the team number 7 here, the Detroit Lions.
Yeah,
431.5 implied points. There's every reason in the world for them not to be as good on offense, and that doesn't mean they're going to crater and be a bad football team.
Of course,
but, probably unanimously thought of as to be the best offensive coordinator in the NFL has moved on from that team, and pretty much unanimously the best center in the NFL in Frank Ragnow is no longer going to be playing football for them. And I know he's been banged up a lot recently, and their record when Frank Ragnow was on the field and not on the field changes dramatically. And so how they're going to overcome some of those things, I think, is a huge question for me with the Detroit Lions. So Bengals like the offense, expect a lot of points there. The Lions, I'm not saying they're going to be bad, but I'm interested to see how that looks. It's going to be a reworked offense in Detroit.
And again, we're talking about elite quarterbacks here, and we did our quarterback tiers last week. I mean, and I say that just because not only do you lose Ragnow, but you lose Zeitler at guard. The entire interior line is going to look different in some way, shape, or form. Decker, the left tackle's a real good player, but he's definitely on the back 9. And the coordinator's so good at scheming those things up. But it brings us back to Goff. If the interior was a little soft for Mahomes or Lamar or one of those guys, they'll be okay. But Goff can't have the pocket pushed in his lap. You know what I mean?
Goff's an underrated quarterback potentially for how his career has gone and how people thought of him a few years ago to how he's played recently. But at the same time, he's not on the level of those guys.
No, we didn't have him. He was just outside our tier 2. And right. I still think he's really good. I think they could win the Super Bowl with him. I'm not a Goff hater. That trade worked out phenomenal for them. But he's had it pretty good. So they also have a really tough schedule too, by the way.
Yeah, and it's not surprising that the teams at the bottom of the list are teams that traditionally have not won a lot of games in recent years and that are not projected to win as many games this year.
A lot of quarterback questions.
Yeah, the bottom 8 teams, and we're not going to talk about the Steelers, who are, if we're talking bottom 9 teams, the Steelers would be there at number 2.
That's where they should be.
But there's a little tier break and quite a few points between them and the next team at 25, who are the Carolina Panthers, 368.5 implied points there, which is, we're starting to talk about almost 100 points off of where we're at with the Buffalo Bills at the top of this list at number 1. You get the Carolina Panthers 20.
Low for Carolina. Carolina's offense doesn't. I mean, I'm not saying it's great, but if Young is the second half of last year average starting quarterback, you throw a first round receiver in there. The line's good. They run the ball well. Their defense is bad. I think I would take the over on that.
Okay, Carolina. I can buy that. I can buy that for Carolina.
Yeah.
26th, Indianapolis Colts. They belong down here. Questions at quarterback.
Yeah.
They do have some skill guys that could, if they do get the quarterback thing, if it happens for them, they could definitely go well above this. 27 is the Las Vegas Raiders. 28 is the Tennessee Titans. 29, New York Jets. 30 is New Orleans Saints. 31, New York Giants. And 32 is the Cleveland Browns.
My biggest takeaways from those bottom 6 or 7 or so, the Raiders are another one I would probably think they outkick 27th. I mean, it's not a bad line.
I think they're going to not
stink.
I don't think they're going to stink on offense.
I think they won't stink on offense.
I don't know if they're going to score a ton of points. I think
they do want to run the ball a lot in short
Right.
games,
Yeah.
but Geno's such an upgrade, and they have a better offensive coordinator and a playmaker at running back to go with Bowers. I could see them being 17th highest scoring team, not the 27th.
Yeah, I would on them being higher than 27th, probably.
Yeah.
And I don't think they belong with, this group of, teams starting rookie quarterbacks, teams that have bad position groups, teams, just so many questions about what the Saints. I would probably put the Saints, to be honest with you, maybe even behind the Browns at 32.
I could see that too.
Yeah.
Now, this is another sharp thing. Vegas win totals, strength of schedule. The Browns and Giants have the two hardest schedules. And how many quarterbacks do we think are going to see the field combined for the Giants and Browns? It might be 7 or 8.
14.
14, yeah, that's about right.
The Browns have 5 quarterbacks.
Right.
One of them is not going to play this year, and any one of the other 4 could be not only playing games and starting games with the opening week start. Like, would it be a shock of any of those 4 quarterbacks with the week 1 start?
Right.
In Cleveland, and in the Giants have a veteran or rookie option, and I'm guessing both of them are going to play at some point this year. And then if there's any injuries, maybe we get to 3. So yeah,
I even mean without injuries. Like a couple years ago, 69 starting quarterbacks got started in the league, and then the year after was 68, and this past year was lower. And of course, that's due to injury. But I could see all 3 Giants. The head coach decides to start them, totally healthy at some point throughout the year. I could see 3 or 4 Browns. The head coach decides to put them out there, not even because they has to. That's a disaster.
So that's Vegas. That's implied points, which is very interesting way to look at the league going into 2025. Now, let's compare that with Bill Barnwell's rankings of skill groups around the NFL. And the number 1 team very low on this list. Next. So taking a look at ESPN Bill Barnwell's list of ranking the skill position groups around the NFL, man.
Just touch on the top 5 or bottom 5 or whatever.
And what stands out here, and it's an interesting list on its own, but when you look at, teams expected to win a lot of games, teams expected to, score a lot of points in the NFL, Josh Allen's going to have to put his cape on again this year.
Yeah. So per Barnwell, and this isn't quite as scientific as the Vegas stuff, which is just all math and, that type of thing. This is his opinion. He just ranks the group of wideouts, tight ends, running backs. It came out today. So the worst skill position group in the league, I just want to go with the top 5, bottom 5 or whatever. Titans are 32. I basically understand that, but there's signs of life there at least. The Panthers are 31. Again, I think Ted McMillan and Chuba Hubbard are okay. It's not so terrible. Patriots are 30. They at least infused that group this year. The last year group was really, really bad. And none of these should shock anybody. Browns are at 29. Okay. Judy, Tillman, Njoku, that's okay. 2nd round running back. But here's the crazy one. And I'm not sure I even disagree. The Bills are at 28. Kincaid, Coleman, they're question marks. I like Cook. I like Shakir, but that's not exactly Saquon and A.J. Brown.
One of the things that this list tells me is how many good skill position players there are in the NFL.
I was thinking that too.
It's hard to look like you go down to deep in the 20s.
Who's the worst?
It's kind of an okay group that you could win with,
Yeah.
You probably got to go and again, going back to that implied scoring, and the Tennessee Titans weren't high, but a team that doesn't have a ton of skill guys that I'm super impressed with and that you believe are going to be like, you can ride this guy and score a bunch of points during an NFL season and compare that with a rookie quarterback. You probably have to start looking at the Tennessee Titans. And I think they're rightly at the bottom of this list and should maybe be in the bottom of the implied scoring list as well. And a team that, even though they might have found their quarterback, unless he is another Jaden Daniels, CJ Stroud right out of the gate, awesome quarterback in the NFL, it's going to be a rough go. And they might not win a lot of games. It might be drafting a guy once again.
Yeah, I thought the exact same thing. Like the Titans had the first pick in the draft last year. They're not a good football team. I'm not saying they are. But if that's the worst group of skill position players in the whole league, this league's got some serious skill position dudes. I mean, if that's last, and I don't think either one of us are predicting it, but if Ward has a Daniels-like rookie year, they're going to be 14th in scoring, even with the guys they have catching the ball and running the ball.
So the Eagles being number one.
Yeah.
Obviously,
I don't think that's shocking.
They've got a great skill group, and you can't argue with that. I've heard some people referencing this article and talking about how easy Jalen Hurts' job has been. Is Jalen Hurts overrated because of the position he's put himself in? Speaking of Warren Sharp, he put out a list of NFL players that have scored 1-yard touchdowns.
Yeah, I saw that.
And it was like Jalen Hurts had 33 such over this period of time. And, the next closest was like 17 or something, and
like Derrick Henry or Josh Jacobs.
Running backs in the NFL have 8, and he's got 33 of these, and there is a little bit of a cheat code there. And if I was, say, blank NFL quarterback, was like, hey man, you could go play in any team right now. It's probably a pretty nice place to go, starting your career behind Jason Kelsey, playing in a well-coordinated offense there. And I know they've kind of bounced around with coordinators, so things got weird a little bit there, but having those skill players, having that offensive line, that would be a nice place to go and be a quarterback. I will say that. Not that Jalen Hurts is overrated, but he's a good quarterback, but nice place to be.
Oh, huge. And I'm not saying he's overrated either. He's played extremely well in the biggest of stages, but frankly, he didn't have that great a year during the regular season. And if Dallas Goedert is like your fourth best skill guy by a wide margin, the top three are studs, that's pretty awesome. And we didn't even factor in the O-line. I mean, a great line coach, awesome pair of tackles. You mentioned Kelsey. Dickerson's a star. When one of the guard spots is your biggest concern on offense right now, and I'm sure they'll figure it out, it's a great environment.
You can go to ESPN and check out that list of skill guys. You can go to FanDuel and check out all the weekly lines as well. If you want to bet on your team to win some of these games, if you want to bet on your team to win the Super Bowl, you can do that as well. And of course, get your questions in and topics in for this week's mailbag on Peacock and Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. We're going to talk division by division, break some teams down here as we get ready for training camp, and talk about teams that we think are going to be better or worse than they were last year, rank some position groups within divisions, and some breakout players around the NFL in every single division. So that is upcoming. Make sure you're tuned in. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. And Matt's got to go drink some more bourbon. We'll be back right here, Peacock and Williamson.